You write about something called the Confucius Institutes. Explain what they are.
This is a really bad deal. Uh, Beijing, the government in China, is funding professors all over American universities. So what they do is they'll go and they posit it as, let's have cultural exchange.
Of course.
And then
Which flies, I'm sure, with the professors
right,
and
they love the
multicultural
idea.
advocates, yeah.
And they'll give a school maybe a couple $1 million or a few $1 million, and they'll say, we'll fund some chairs, like a chair in Chinese history or something. But then what they get to do is they get to pick the professor who gets the job. So that's, some Chinese professor picked by the Communist Party. So really you have a plant in universities. And where that comes into play is, if there's ever an issue like over Taiwan or China or something global, they're positioned in these universities to then have the conferences or the panels or the speakers. So you have sort of basically Chinese agents on American campuses controlling the debate about China. So it's just a way, it's another way to kind of control the debate here. And what's scary is, and they have these Confucius Institutes all over the country, they're starting a model now to bring them into high schools and middle schools. So the Chi-Coms are going to be able to like brainwash kids as if, public schools aren't brainwashing kids enough. Yeah. But now it's actually going to be coming from Beijing.
Just another layer of it.
Love your suit.
Beautiful people, I am Oliver Perrin, and this evening I am speaking to Mr. Tim Rudisill here within the comforting confines of a safer space. As many of you know, I have had my Semi-Doc channel sort of beaten into a corner by YouTube. I have 2 content strikes that I am waiting I'm waiting for them to expire. And as soon as they do, I will be posting more content to Semigog and more regularly. But for the time being, this is it. So please stay subscribed at Semigog. I continue to have people shaved off. Please, if you haven't been there in a while, drop into the channel or check your subscription on it. Make sure that you are subscribed and subscribe here. You can also follow the channel on Twitter, on Gab, on
Patreon,
and on Patreon. Blessings and love to all the channel patrons. So thank you as always for the support. Now I am with Mr. Tim, and he has brought forward as a topic for our discussion this idea of Chinese cunning, and in particular an example of it that I think he's got some interesting points to make about that should give us all cause for considering these things. Confucian societies that are operating in many places around the world under government support. I don't know much about them, though, so I will leave it to Tim to properly launch this. What do you have for us, sir?
Well, Confucian societies are a grand thing. They deal with the philosophy of Confucius, who was very, very much well thought of during a long period of time. He was a lovely man, and he believed in all sorts of things that had absolutely nothing to do with keeping the state afloat. Nothing. They were part of the bubble of ancient China, and they were kept in place by a number of people who did not understand the realities of life.
Among the ranks of mandarins.
Yes. They wanted to denigrate and humiliate everyone involved with military. Whatever the military might be involved in, the Confucians wanted to humiliate, denigrate, and keep away from the emperor as much as possible. Now, the Chinese have a unique situation in that they have real live bubbles that are inheritable. if you're in the ranks of the mandarins, as it were, then your dealings with everyone come down to your family. Whereas in the military, once you got outside these bubbles, it was not always the case. People would come up in the military, and they would, well, let me put it like this. There were 7 ancient Chinese systems that were very much kept secret from the people at large, and even from the mandarins at large. They were the art of war. They were, oh goodness, all the treatises on how to conduct war, what war started, how war was ended, how war was fought. These people did not want anything to do with war. And this became institutionalized in the Confucian school of thought. I leave it to people to read Confucius and Mencius and so on to, shall we say, gain an understanding of this. But it's easily gained. I would submit that what you've really got is you've got a lovely, lovely system of how to lose, and lose well. Lose like a gentleman in war. Confucius is always seen in war as getting into his carriage and driving away from the war because he had nothing to say to war.
And interestingly enough, and perhaps quite a bit furthering the point I suspect you're ultimately making here, Confucianism is still considered the major normative force within Chinese society. It is sort of the guidebook for social and familial relations for all the people there.
Yes, it is, very much so.
Which would seem to be useful in keeping them pacifistic.
You don't mean that. Not really. You don't suppose that China has been for thousands of years running a con job on its own population? Do you mean that, really?
Imagine my shock.
Imagine your shock. Yes. What was Mao's little red book except a restatement of Sun Tzu's Art of War?
And yet, wasn't that little
wonder?
Isn't that little red book something that all the good party members were supposed to read?
Party members? Party members? Oh.
But not the unwashed masses.
Oh, damn it, man. You don't mean that. Makes one to wonder, eh? Eh? Well. Yes, Ollie. And on that I rest my case. Because to be honest with you, there is nothing in Chinese philosophy as espoused under Confucianism that deals with war except to say that war is bad.
Yeah, the
war should not happen.
The art of war traditions are very much, as best I can tell, and this is not my field, but they seem to be tightly tied with Taoism. And the Taoists are the ones who would wander off to their crazy-ass communities, be out on the outside. I mean, you have the archetypal thing of Lao Tzu on a water buffalo. I mean, Zhongzhu was probably, represented on a damn water buffalo leaving, if I remember correctly. So the Taoists were always liminal, and their message was always somewhat liminal relative to broader Chinese culture. So again, sort of reinforcing the same point.
Oh, yes, grasshopper. Bullshit. The whole thing is basically a con job tied up with a cute little ribbon and presented to the United States of America in its universities as Confucian societies. And it makes one wonder what these Confucian societies actually gather to themselves. They gather the least, last, lost, and loneliest of the intellectual idiots. They gather to themselves vast amounts of intelligence, vast amounts of shared technology, and provide a huge base for bringing in lots and lots of Chinese students who studied our universities. Golly gee, you don't suppose on their government's nickel, do you? Well, it must be, because the Chinese can't afford the tuition for Duke University, for Harvard, for Yale, for Princeton. No, I guess not. Can't afford UCLA, out of state. Huh. So they're studying on the Chinese nickel, and they're studying all this really esoteric knowledge that we have in high tech. At the same time, they get jobs driving senators around. The real thing is, Ollie, that we have laid ourselves open because of people like Senator Feinstein and her husband with his multiple blank banks and bank accounts to the tender ministrations of Chinese people. And they have been giving us the death of 1,000 cuts. They have been administering to us Confucian syllogisms. Not the art of war, but Confucian syllogisms. They have been taking us through this entire program and paying probably for any number of, goodness gracious, SJW type things.
Well, yes, as you pointed out about how it would attract the riffraff, as it were, it is the cultural relativism, the abandonment of one's roots. It kind of puts me in mind of the whole thing about the greatest sin is to be deprived of the presence of God. And the only way you can do that is by not admitting that there is a God, this fundamental sin, which ultimately means that you have yourself removed yourself from that source of all that is, not to get overly theological, but you can take that same concept over and say that the nihilism of the SJW today is a result of having chosen to turn themselves away from our own cultural roots. We talked about this years ago when I was a teenager, talking to you. You came in, you laughed because I had a book there. I was dating that half Japanese chick. And it was called Japanese for Busy People, and you're like, Japanese for busy people. I do like that, but we had talked about it at the time, the people who desperately go away to other cultures, some of them even moving away to distant places like Turkey and living there for years in order to try to find some basis for connection. In my case, I returned having lived abroad and spoken another language, and it returned me, oddly enough, much more completely to my own roots than you would at first expect. And so when you talk about these SJWs and the thrill, we've got Buddhist monasteries in Northern California. We've got mosques full
got
of
them in North Carolina too.
Yeah, happy new Muslims and happy new fill in the blank. Anything but Western European peoples. And so that's another dimension of the draw here. It's purpose-built. It's designed to perfectly fit, to lock into the SJW nihilistic, Western-rejecting receptor.
On top of which you have rap music. I bet you didn't expect to hear about rap music in Confucianism, did you? But it's of a piece with it. It's part of the nihilist approach.
Well, in the sense of bringing in destructive, crumbling pieces of everything in order to have anything but something.
And to keep those crumbling pieces polished up, shined up, and golly gee, attractive to young black men. Very attractive to young black men. While I was in prison, I would constantly see these fellows working on their raps, pounding on garbage cans, doing all their little stuff to get their rap in place. And they were determined they were going to be big rap stars when they got out. And I thought to myself, man, you are a fucking idiot. Go eat an ice cream cone somewhere. Just not near me. But I was always nice to them and polite to them because they were such idiots, such fools. All they could see was this boomity, boomity, boomity. My mama does this, your mama does that. My dick is so hard, my gun is so fast. Never realizing they were creating for themselves a world in which the only outcome for this could be their demise. So they could live up to the rapper. Okay. Count me in on that.
And so when we take a look at Chinese Confucian societies, other than the pacifistic dimension, what is the inevitable outcome of stepping into that, or stepping through that looking glass of rejection?
War is the inevitable outcome
of the Confucian societies.
Yes, it is. That's why rap fits so well with it. Do you not see, Ollie? If I reject war and all things to do with war so thoroughly and create a bubble in which we speak to each other, but only with this syllogism,
then the deterrent disappears?
The deterrent doesn't disappear. It goes underground and goes outside the bubble, which is what's happening today in America. Do you not see it? Come now, surely you must. Surely you must see this nonsense coming together out here.
Well, sure.
That there is war in the offing.
Yes, quite.
Well,
I'm processing here in the background this notion that the creation of artificial bubbles of peace necessarily entails war. And so I'm trying to, apply it in different ways, and I'm trying to cross-reference and see if I can pull other examples. I mean, in the example of rap that you gave, you've got the idea of showing behavior that is unsuccessful, as though it is successful.
Well, it is successful, man. Get you plenty of bling. Plenty of bling. And that's all you're good for anyway, is a scarecrow for bling. Who gives a fuck whether it's a Snoop Dogg or rapper whatever, who is the thing for the bling? Who gives a fuck? Plenty of bling.
Yeah, they're ultimately coat hangers, display stands.
Fine. I mean, how many times have you seen the bling extend to such things as the type of boots they wore, the type of shoes they wore?
Yeah,
and as soon as the fashion changed, everybody had to have new ones.
Yeah, that guy came up to your son apparently at some point, and with a oblique, threatening demeanor said, "I really like your shoes." And what'd your son say?
No, it wasn't his shoes; it was his coat.
Oh, that's right. It was the damn Steelers jacket.
No, it was the. Let's see. God, it was I've forgotten now. It was some sort of great big puffy jacket.
It's a sports team jacket, though, right?
Sports team jacket, yeah. And it was like Oakland City Raiders. That was what it was. And Oakland City was a big gang. and my son was fucking around the edges of it at that time. And the guy came up and went, man, I really like that jacket. And Micah went, then buy your ass one. And that was about as far as it went. The guy just stood there going, ah.
Right. The synapses begin to misfire.
Sure. It was totally outside his realm. But then Micah always was outside their realm. See, the thing is that no matter how you look at this thing, you've got rappers who are just corpses looking for the right time to lie down. You know, the right time to burst forth in bleeding. Well, that's fine. You know, they got plenty of bling going on for them. They get plenty of blowjobs, plenty of cheap white broads, plenty of cheap black broads. It's all good, man. All good. But it bears nothing of the peace that these people keep talking about in their bubbles. It's outside the bubble, but it's a constant outside the bubble, right? Because there are always more and more of these young, stupid black people to feed to it. It's like a hot furnace. You know, the more coal you toss in it, the hotter it gets. Great.
And now help me again to tie this together with the Confucianism. I mean, I can see parallels because you got bubbles and you got what goes on outside them. And what goes on outside them is agitated and quickened by the fact that the people within the bubbles are ignorant and take no steps to stop it. But it seems that you're trying to point out a much more tangible connection specifically between Confucian societies and rap music, and I'm not quite seeing it.
Rap music is only a side effect. What I'm really pointing out is the way in which so much of what's outside the bubble, which is the majority of things, always is the majority. Always the majority outside the bubble. The purpose of the bubble is to be a minority, an extremely well-versed minority, but a minority nonetheless. What you have is a vast mass of people that are getting tired of it all. They're constantly scratching their heads going, I'm not a racist. I'm not a misogynist. I'm not a. Why are these people calling me this constantly? And these people keep calling them this. And they are the voice, you see. They are the hidden voice of the Confucians in our colleges, in our societies. They are paid for by people like Soros and the Confucianists and so on. It really doesn't matter who pays them. There aren't that many of them. And what they have, you may have noticed, is a lot of females, an awful lot of females. And females constantly do enjoy peace, you see. They like peace. Peace is good. I, on the other hand, prefer war. War is honest. Peace is dishonest. But be that as it may, what you have are all these people out here going, oh, I want peace, I want peace. And then you've got these other people going, I don't understand why they're constantly attacking me. And we're getting ready for a war because we cannot talk to each other anymore. You may recall from one of our earliest little diatribes on this video nonsense that I said, what you have is you have the First Amendment or you have war. You either have freedom of speech where you can talk about whatever you want, or you must have war. Both are forms of communication. Both espouse an attitude and a philosophy.
Right, one's asking, the other's telling.
Indeed so. And as I said several years ago, if you don't have freedom of speech, then you must have war. And they have just about done away with freedom of speech, except where Uncle Donald Trump is trying to bring it back through Metis. And he's trying to bring it back, but it's not going to fly because he's got so many other things on a timeline with his bringing back of freedom of speech. So it'll be probably 2020 before we get around to that.
So you think that this continuing, this is a tangent, but an interesting one to me in any case, you think we're going to continue to see this smashing and deplatforming and booting from Twitter and booting from YouTube? You think we're going to see it continue to increase after the midterms? I mean, there's got to be a pushback point, and presumably Trump is going to want to take some action prior to the point at which he's going to most need these communications channels. So it would be somewhere between.
When does he most need them?
Before 2020, 3 months before.
For what does he need them? For what does he need them?
Well, basically, without them, he's got Fox and OAN and maybe CRTV.
No.
I mean, he's got his rallies. But, you know, all of this is dependent on him staying on Twitter. So I guess the question is whether or not the Twitter people will ever get to the point where they remove him.
I don't think they can. And I think they realize that. I think they also realize that Twitter means less to him than anything else. That what he can do is he can get on and have a national press conference by throwing a rally. Yeah.
Right. Or just come out, you know, unannounced over to the lawn, you know, outside the White House and say things for 1 minute.
But why should he do that? Why should he do that? Why not get out there in front of a crowd and really have the crowd chomping along with him? No. What you have is you have Trump getting the FBI, the CIA, the Justice Department, all these people that we've spoken of before, into a lump, a knot, where he gets to skim off the political appointees and get down to the real people who work there. Get down to the real FBI agents who are G-men, who have spent 20, 30 years climbing the ladder of G-men. When you've got plenty of people climbing the ladder of being a CIA agent. These are all people that Trump wants to keep. What Trump doesn't want is he doesn't want the political appointees. You see? So he's got to get rid of them, and getting rid of them, he basically clears the slate because he gets to bring in people from other areas. He gets to do away with the D.C. mob, the D.C. swamp. You may or may not have noticed he's lining up Nancy Pelosi. He's lining up Feinstein. He's lining up all these people and getting them into positions where they can be taken down completely. And golly gee, everything they've done is called into question. You realize that Mrs. Feinstein, whatever her name is, has sullied her reputation so thoroughly that everything she has done as a senator is now in question.
Yeah, and they've got another person running against her in the primary. Her own party kind of wants her out because they know, as has been suggested by some, commentators, that the Democrats, even fucking California Democrats, can sense that this Chinese thing is going to be a mess for her.
Boy, it's going to be so wonderful, isn't it? Just marvelous. Too marvelous for words. Because she has shit all over her post toasties for the past 20 some odd years. I'd be willing to bet if you went and took a look at her, you would find that she has voted for China to the benefit of her bank account, her family's bank accounts, her husband's banks and bank accounts, and to the detriment of everything that the United States stands for.
Yeah, and there's stuff coming out now about how, the only people who had direct flights, the one airline that had direct flights into China is one that she and her husband have a major financial interest in, and it was probably, mutual back scratching with her patrons, Chinese patrons. So basically, she's lining her pockets at the expense of the nation. So we have...
and how many more senators are there like her? And House of Representatives people?
Doubtless many. Hopefully
suppose
soon
cover
see.
Be snatched off of Molly?
I sure do
and
like
they'll
that
be going,
idea.
Look at that, my God. Who'd have thought you could do that with a dog?
Well, how would you wrap this discussion up of Confucian societies and Chinese cunning? What would you leave our viewers with when they go off to maybe look into these societies and learn more about them? There are probably a lot of people who haven't thought about this specific aspect.
I would say look well and deeply into it. Look well and deeply, because you'll run into any number of barricades and barriers, any number of places where it seems to dry up and blow away. Any number of places where no matter how you look, suck what?